Um, yeah, so we're going to get started, everybody. Hi, I'm Dr. Phyllis West. On behalf of Governor State University and the Department of Social Work, we welcome you to the Community Practice Learning Lab. The Community Practice Learning Lab was developed in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. COVID has disrupted our lives throughout the world. I am sure we all agree. And now looking at what's going on in Chicago area, now we're back on a very serious lockdown in order to get COVID in order. It has even hit harder in underserved communities, and that's why during the summer, Dr. Crowder and I had begun having conversations about what can we do, what can social work, the profession, and our students do to serve communities in the Southland area in the midst of COVID. Yes, we were thinking about how can we be of service during this very challenging time. So we created what is called the Learning Lab, the Community Practice Learning Lab. The Community Practice Learning Lab is a training center for social work students seeking macro level field placements. Students are training to address current community challenges from a social work and a public health perspective. Our dedicated students and talented students are certified contact tracers through Governor State University and Johns Hopkins University. They work side by side, nonprofit and governmental organizations, to provide resources to families and communities in the areas of COVID, structural racism, education, violence, and voters' disenfranchisement. We thank you once again for joining us today. And the next voice you're going to hear from is Dr. Lori Crowder. Dr. Lori Crowder is my colleague, partner in crime, co-founder of the Community Practice Learning Lab. She is a professor in the Department of Social Work, and she's the executive director of the Alliance of Local Service Organizations. Also, with all of that, she is also an expert in community and family violence. It's an honor to work with you, Dr. Crowder, and I'm going to turn the mic over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. West. It's an honor and a privilege to work with you as well. As Dr. West indicated, the Community Practice Learning Lab was an idea that Dr. West and I had. It was probably spring into summer. We got so excited and impassioned about the idea of social work and public health. So the public health lens brought by Dr. West and the social work lens, right? But what can we do to create capacity to look at the ways that social problems intersect, right? And to address the pandemic. And the purpose of this event takes that approach. So this event is designed to raise awareness about domestic violence. It is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, but also to take a closer look at the impact that COVID-19 has had on victims of domestic violence, but also on domestic violence services. So this approach, taking a look at the interaction of social issues, is central to the way that the Community Practice Learning Lab approaches learning. And so I'm so excited and humbled that the Community Practice Learning Lab members are putting that kind of intersectional lens and the intersectional approach into practice for this event. I want to take a moment to welcome our Governor State University students, staff, and faculty who are participating. And I also want to give a special note of recognition to Dr. West and her social work practice class that are with us today, as well as to Dr. Coffey and her social work diversity class who are with us as well. I also just want to give a shout out to Dr. Coffey. Dr. Coffey has worn many hats over her career, working for decades. She's had decades of service around domestic violence. She has worn many hats. She's worked in Chicago. She's worked around the country as a practitioner, as a policy advocate, as a trainer, as a consultant, as an academic now, to find new ways to bring light to addressing the problem of domestic violence, particularly for those who are unserved or underserved which is what we're talking about today. And so I just wanted to say how grateful we are to have her and her diversity class with us today. I'm also grateful to the community members from around Chicago who are participating with us, from the south side, west sides of Chicago and the Southland. I'm also grateful to our panelists who you'll meet in just a minute, right? From WINGS and from the Alliance of Local Service Organizations. But first, I'd like to introduce our co-moderators. So I want to introduce you to Vanessa Gomez and Charlicia Grizzard as our co-moderators. Both are MSW students at Governor State University who have distinguished track records in academic and community service. I'm so proud to be working alongside them. Vanessa is in the MSW program at GSU, and she graduated from GSU with a BA in interdisciplinary studies and a minor in social work. So she's not new to social work. And Vanessa is the current president of Generating Hope. And if you haven't heard about Generating Hope, it's a student organization that provides support and advocacy for individuals who've been impacted by mass incarceration. Vanessa also provides supports to incoming students to GSU who are new to GSU through the New Students Program as a peer mentor. Now Charlicia Grizzard is in her third and final year. Congratulations, Charlicia. Of the MSW program at Governor State University. She has a BA in clinical counseling psychology. She's worked in social services for the past 30 years, concentrating on mental health and child welfare. She's worked at UCP Seguin of Greater Chicago for the past 10 years and is currently a child welfare adoption specialist there. And in her spare time, I understand she enjoys watching reruns of Law and Order SVU and is a fan of blues music. So with that, what I'd like to do is turn it to Charlicia to introduce our panelists.
All right, well, thank you and welcome everyone. We really appreciate you joining us today. And I just want to take a few moments to introduce to you our panelists this afternoon. We have Mathena Krall. Mathena Krall is currently enrolled in the Bachelor of Social Work dual degree program at Governor State University. After graduation, Mathena plans to complete her advanced degree in social work. She is a member of the National Association of Social Workers and the National Society of Collegiate Scholars. Mathena is currently completing an internship at WINGS as a Illinois domestic violence professional. She is committed to helping empower women that have suffered from trauma or abuse. Mathena stated that her passion is to be the woman that she needed when she was going through similar situations. So welcome, Mathena. We also have Tara Campbell. She's a resilience program manager. Tara is a Chicago native. Tara has sown into countless social justice endeavors and empowerment causes throughout her city. And also, she integrates local and national work coordinating initiatives with outreach and providing technical assistance for grantees nationwide, holding a Bachelor of Arts degree from Columbia College, Chicago, in communication and a Master of Science in Nonprofit Management from Spertus Institute. Tara creates ways to infuse her formal education with her passion of arts and entertainment. She is committed to enhancing the work of outreach as a facilitator within the Metropolitan Peace Academy in partnership with ALSO. Through the Communities Partnering for Peace, the Academy, convened by Metropolitan Family Services, is a framework that provides a comprehensive long-term approach to reducing violence and gang activity. This work is rooted in nonviolence, it's trauma-informed care, hyper-local collaboration, and restorative justice practices. Additionally, Tara co-facilitates a grief support group, Hope After Loss, that's on Chicago's West Side for survivors of homicide victims. Her personal mission is to assist others with resources and opportunities to perform at their highest potential. Learning from others who have paved the way in areas of philanthropy and advocacy has propelled her to tailor make a satisfying career path. Sorry about that. So welcome, Tara. And we have Lisa Jurgensen. Now, Lisa earned her bachelor's degree from Governor State University in 2012 with a minor in psychology and social work. She became very involved with Governor State University social work student organization and Generating Hope during that time. In 2013, Lisa started the master's program and became the president of the social work student organization in 2014 and 2015, along with Generating Hope and Phi Alpha Honor Society. And Lisa discovered that she had a passion for working with survivors of domestic violence. In January 2016, Lisa started working as a family advocate for Wings Program Incorporated. She is a certified clinical trauma professional and an Illinois certified domestic violence professional. And when Lisa is not at work, she loves making memories with her family and she enjoys dancing. So welcome, Lisa. All right, and so those are our three panelists for the afternoon. And again, we welcome everyone. Thank you for coming. And now I'm going to turn it over to Vanessa.
Hello, everyone. Domestic violence is prevalent in every community and affects all people regardless of age, socioeconomic status, sexual orientation, gender, race, religion, or nationality. Physical violence is often accompanied by emotionally abusive and controlling behavior as a part of a much larger systematic pattern of dominance and control. Domestic violence can result in physical injury, psychological trauma, and even death. The devastating consequences of domestic violence can cross generations and last a lifetime. In this presentation, we will focus and further analyze the impact of domestic violence in the following categories: women, race, age, income, the COVID-19 pandemic, and the service gap. Sorry, give me 1 second. Sorry about that. Psychological aggression is the most common form of intimate partner violence, affecting men and women of all races and ethnicities. The percentage of American Indian and Alaska Native women estimated to be victimized by intimate partners is higher than any other race or ethnicity. According to the National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey, an estimated 47% of men and women will be victims of psychological aggression by an intimate partner in their lifetime. In addition, 1/3 of women will be victims of physical violence and 1/4 of contact sexual violence by an intimate partner. Almost 1/4 of men will be victims of physical violence by an intimate partner. An estimated 71% of females intimate partner victims are victimized before age 25, 23% before age 18. Comparatively, 58% of male inmate partners victims are victimized before age 25, 14% before age 18. household earnings between $15,000 and $24,999 reported slightly more intimate partner victimizations in 2015 than other households. However, intimate partner violence is not isolated to any particular income bracket. When considering the COVID-19 pandemic, it is important to consider the following statements and questions. When considering these statistics, we have to consider the impact that the pandemic has on domestic violence. How has the pandemic, quarantine, social distancing, remote learning affected domestic violence? How has the pandemic limited the availability of victim services? And of course, it's important to note the service gap. In more than 80% of intimate partner violence victimizations, the victim did not receive assistance for services in 2015. Now, I will hand over the discussion to Shirlisha to further analyze the correlation between domestic violence in the community and the coronavirus pandemic.
All right, and so we're gonna go ahead and get started with our panelists because I know they are excited to jump in and start sharing their information. And so for those of you who are joining us via Facebook Live, use the chat box. If you have any questions, if you want our panelists to expound on something, if they haven't been clear about something, if you need some sort of support, feel free to go ahead and put it in the chat. And we'll make sure we address those at the toward the end of our session. Okay. So I just want to start off with and ask Tara. Tara, how do you define domestic violence?
So thank you for the opportunity, and I'm really glad to be here today to talk about an important subject. I think that Vanessa gave a really good definition. You know, the dictionary definition, one of them is physical, emotional, financial, or sexual abuse by a family member. That the intent of the abuse is to control or harm the individual or individuals, and it's a pattern of behavior. My own personal definition, kind of adding to that, I look at it as a dangerous reality that impacts us all. Often the roots are, you know, it's confined to your home, confined to an individual's home, but it permeates way beyond the home.
Okay. And so you said that it's a pattern, right?
Yes, ma'am, a pattern of behavior.
Okay. So what if the person, what if the abuse is just one time? What if that first slap? Would that be considered domestic violence as well?
Yes, ma'am. It would definitely be considered domestic violence, and something, one of the stats that Vanessa read, or she mentioned, was that often the emotional, the psychological abuse happens way before the physical. So 9 times out of 10, if the physical did take place, there had been some pattern of the physical prior to that.
Okay.
Great question.
Thank you. All right. And Lisa, how has domestic violence changed since the coronavirus pandemic began? And I'm asking because I know there's been reports, because I work in child welfare, there have been reports that a lot of our child abuse reports come from the schools because the kids are in school. But since the coronavirus pandemic has started, those reports, of course, have been decreased. Not that the abuse has decreased, but the reports have decreased. So I'm curious to know how domestic violence has changed in this aspect since the coronavirus pandemic began.
Okay, well, once again, I want to say also thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be here on this panel this evening. Well, to answer that question, for what I see at work every day, that the numbers with child abuse have somewhat increased. And what I mean by that is what we do every day here when we have openings in our safe house. We do what we call an intake. And when we talk to the survivor, man, woman, child, the man and woman in the household, they talk about the child being present when the abuse happened. And for us being mandated reporters, we have to, of course, make a DCFS call, not to do anything against the mother or the survivor that's in our safe house, but to report that they had witnessed it. So I hope I'm answering this question right, that when DV or domestic violence happens in the home, the kids are there because the children are not leaving the home due to coronavirus. They're not going out as much as they used to. And like you said a minute ago, they're not in school. So when the couple or the pair, it could be anybody, mother, daughter, father, son, any of those, when any of the abuse happens, I've noticed that with our job, we are making way more phone calls to DCFS and having investigators come to our safe house just to check on the families and make sure that they're in a safe place.
Okay. Okay. So, all right. And so with the stay-at-home order and the children being home with the parents, especially if they're in a shelter, they do have that other level buffer to kind of keep them safe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. So what about remote learning? How's remote learning going? with the-
It's going good. We've got a lot of volunteers here in our safe house that help with the remote learning, and also us as family advocates help our individual caseload as well.
Okay.
Parents are frustrated because if you're not technically inclined, it's very hard and takes a lot of practice from the beginning of the school year to get used to the kids logging on and talking to the teacher. Because it's not just like us on this Zoom call where we click the digit number and we see everybody. They're jumping from screen to screen, subject to subject, and things like that. And sometimes they're even doing independent learning where they'll pause the school or the classroom and the students have to do independent learning where the parents have to help. And so it's challenging.
Okay. And so, and I can understand that if being at the safe house, that's good because you guys are there, you have that buffer. You can be that buffer for the children or for the parents as well. But I'm wondering, Mathena, if you could probably speak to, for those who are not at the safe house, those who may be at home with the paramour or husband or at home. Who doesn't or are those calls increasing, being reported for those families who are at home?
Okay, first of all, thank you for having me as well. Some calls do still happens. Oftentimes the schools will make phone calls to the parents if their child isn't logged on for whatever reason. Um, but for the most part, you see a lot of it still happening.
Okay. Okay. Lisa, do you think some of the facilities who've acted as safe havens for families, do you think that they've had to close because of COVID?
Yes. For example, for our safe house, we hold 45 people, children and adults, 45 total. And right now, due to COVID, we are only open, I think, we're at either a 28 or 30 capacity right now because we have to space out. So just picture a hotel room, for an example. And you walk in the hallway and every room is filled. So with our facility, we're housing every other room for that social distancing. So think about it. If we were able to take an intake phone call and house whatever we had open, we have to reject pretty much half of what we were able to hold or house because of COVID to keep everybody safe. In our safe house, we would have consider like think about a hotel suite where you have a room, possibly a bathroom, and then another room.
Mm-hmm.
2 families would share a bathroom. So not right now because of COVID, we have to give that one family and they get their own bathroom where, like we were saying, there's nobody next to
Yeah.
the bathroom to keep, once again, everybody safe, germs, and so on and so forth.
So yeah, so the services are still there, but they're just not as plentiful.
Right.
Okay. Okay.
I have a question that can be answered by any one of our panelists, and that is, who does not seek services and why?
Typically the ones
Okay.
that, go ahead, Lisa.
Okay. With or without COVID, a lot of the population of the LGBTQ, et cetera, as I say, because I know there's a lot more terms out there in the past year, because of the stigma. And then we've also noticed at Wings, a lot of gang affiliated abusers do not get help because of the fear of the whole retaliation against either family or friends. With that, related to that gang member, because just because there's a hotline and you kind of do an intake with agencies that are opened, people are also able to call the hotline and just ask questions, whether you know a female friend or a guy friend that's in abuse, you want to just learn how to help them. So you'll call the hotline and one of us will speak to them. But I get a lot of phone calls, not so much during COVID, but it was saying, okay, I'm in a relationship, this is what's going on, but they're a gang member and I'm really, really scared. So you kind of safety plan them through that aspect. But those are a lot of the ones that either don't go to a shelter or you don't know if they went to a shelter.
I would also say, in addition to the populations that Lisa spoke of, it may seem simple, but for those who don't even recognize that they are in a domestic violence situation, given COVID or not, if they don't see their relationship or their situation as volatile, and we talked about earlier that pattern of behavior, this is something they've seen maybe all of their lives and didn't really recognize it as something wrong. 9 times out of 10, those are your people that are not going to call either. They're not going to reach out for help unless the light is shined in a way where they understand that there is a different way of living.
So you're saying they're generations because they may not recognize that it was normal for their families.
For
So they
some,
saw-
yes,
They saw
absolutely.
their grandmother, mother.
And yes, and I mention that because it is common for patterns, for behavior to repeat itself, right? Like you said, generational. However, I didn't come from an abusive home. I'm a survivor of domestic violence. So I didn't seek out help just because of pure embarrassment. I didn't want anybody to know what I was going through. So that is COVID or no COVID, that could also be a reason why others don't reach out for help.
Okay.
And also to piggyback on what Tyra said, oftentimes people don't reach out as well because of fear. Just fear will just keep a person bound to their circumstances and their situation. So they won't, and they'll continue to stay isolated.
Okay.
Moving forward, what domestic violence services are available to families during the COVID-19 pandemics? Are there shelters or in-person services still available? Are they basically just remote services that are being offered right now?
So I guess that depends on certain agencies. Here at Wings, we still do have in-person services depending on the situation, unless someone is exhibiting any symptoms of COVID, then they won't want to even see anyone. But we still do have in services as well as virtual.
What about at also, Tara?
And also, so we partner with other organizations that may provide housing or shelter, immediate shelter. But we do have in-person counseling. So what it looks like for us is I manage case managers, and victim advocates. They're called resilience advocates. And what if there is an incident or a need for us to intervene, then we meet with participants. So we will meet with the victim face to face. And with all of the PPE standards in place, you know, masks, hand sanitizers, things of that nature. And we have it as well for participants. We meet with them. However, we also partner with several other organizations. One in particular is Metropolitan Family Services, where they provide behavioral health services for many of our current participants. And they meet with them. They have the choice to either meet virtually or in person. Often it is in person in our offices, but we are very clear about, you know, we take temperatures. That's part of our wellness ambassador kind of process to make sure those things are set in place. So our other partners that do provide shelter and other services, we just stay on top of it and stay in communication. Unfortunately, with COVID, things change, if not week to week, day by day.
Mathena,
Sorry.
go ahead, Vanessa.
No, go ahead. Mathena was gonna add, right?
I was going to ask Mathena, how much denial do you think is going on?
Oh, it's a lot of demand. It's a lot. Going back to what Tyler said, people don't even see that they're even being abused. Oftentimes, abuse starts basically from calling someone out their name. That right there is abuse, and people normalize that because they don't feel like that's actually abuse. But words do hurt. Words stick with you, and in fact, words probably hurt more than the actual physical because they stay with you even after the abuse is gone.
Okay. All
So
right.
I'm sorry, Shirleysia, you had something else to add?
Nope.
So moving forward, if someone wanted to get an order of protection, how would they go about obtaining one right now that there is a limit in accessibility? Would they have to schedule one, or are they can they go to the courthouse and obtain one?
So right now, um, everything is virtual. So they have to literally they're on hold. They're on hold. It's like you in court, but you're on your phone or on your laptop, just waiting, hearing other people's cases as they come up. So you cannot go into downtown to do it. You have to do everything virtual.
I know you can start the process. You are right, Mathena. You can start the process in person. I'm currently working with a couple of clients that did obtain orders of protection. So we were able to go physically there, but that was the last time we were able to go. After that, all of the continuances have been virtual. So like you said, imagine being on your phone for 4 hours, just waiting to be called for your process in front of the judge to only take 5 minutes. But you're on hold from 8:30 in the morning until 12:30 to be seen by the judge. So it is virtual. There are lots of, it's unfortunate, but it's a lot of cases. And the cases are unfortunately being continued. And I've been in court maybe with one case, maybe 5 times in front of the judge. So, and each time the time has gotten less. So we're now down to 2.5 hours, but you're looking at an extensive wait to only, you know, if the person who I'm with is the petitioner, if the respondent doesn't appear in court, then you have 9 times out of 10, you're going to be continued. The case will be continued.
And may I add to that too? So just imagine someone that is in court or on their phone for 2 to 4 hours. That discourages them from even going forward. And by that time, they don't even want to move forward with the order of protection. They figure out ways that they can handle it on their own based off just sitting there on hold and then see the judge for 5 minutes.
Do you guys even think the orders of protection are helpful? Do they really help protect the victims?
Yes, I think they do.
Okay.
Because for those of you that might not know a lot about orders of protections that are listening on Facebook Live, on an order of protection, you don't just list your perpetrator. When you can list family of your perpetrator. You can list schools, daycares, work. So you are highly protected if that perpetrator or abuser knows like where you work, where the kids' daycares are, where your mom or dad live, where your cousins live. You can list everything, or I should say every agency or building and relative to keep you safe from those places and or people.
Okay.
Now, do they, oh, sorry.
No, it's okay, Lisa. Go ahead. I just have a follow-up question, but you can finish your thought on.
Oh, no, I was gonna say, do they ever get violated? Yes, they do. So sometimes the person might show up at the mother's house or the father's house or the school. And that's a whole nother, conversation. But yes, I think, they're meant to keep the survivor safe. And they do sometimes.
So from my personal experience, no, it didn't help for me. My personal experience, it was more of, if I'm going to get you, I'm going to get you.
Wow.
I'm definitely sorry to hear that, Mathena.
Mhm.
That has been, I know I've heard that a lot of times, but I wanted to know if it's, like if I'm sure they help in some situations, but it's definitely discouraging and very unfortunate in those situations where they don't. So I'm sorry you're able to report that.
May I
And
add to that? Oh,
Yeah, I
I'm
was
sorry. Go
gonna
ahead,
add to
Lisa.
that with us being a safe
Mhm.
house, we've actually had perpetrators come on the property with orders of protection, which is really sad. We have our own protocol on what to do in the house when that ever happens. And I don't know how much of you guys know in Wings, but there are 2 safe houses with our agency. Mathena and I are on the Chicago, we can't tell you where, but we're in the Chicagoland area safe house, and there's one in the northern suburbs. But like you said, like Mathena had said, people, they do, just because you have a piece of paper, that person, if they want to get you, we keep them safe, of course, but that does happen.
Okay. Okay.
Considering I know that in the statistical presentation that the presentation started off with, there was a service gap of 80%. So only 18% of victims were getting services with the limitations of being able to obtain an order of protection. What is that? How is that going to affect who's getting services and who's not? How is that basically going to affect the people, that the 18% that are getting services?
That is a very good question. I don't know, Tara, since you work, I don't know, well, no, I can search answer it.
Yeah.
What I've learned working here also is, yes, as we all know, statistics are what is written, of course, with data on paper, people that complete surveys and so forth. What I can kind of add to that, I don't know if this really answers the question or not, but like we had mentioned earlier, but Mathena and I, what we do here, a person comes into the safe house. Our program is a 119-day program, tops. We normally it's a 6-week program. So let's say, for example, you come to the safe house, you do the whole program, meet with your family advocate, take advantage of the counseling services, the children counseling services. You do everything you're supposed to do when you're here. And you're called what we call a graduate. You moved on and you got services. Where there's also those people that have been maybe asked to leave our program because they violated, Mathena, and feel free to chime in, when they've violated and breached confidentiality, because that has happened as well. So those people might be some of the ones in statistics that say that they don't get help, because we have to ask them to leave, even if you simply brought an Uber on property. You could tell us it was a Lyft or an Uber driver, but how do any of us staff know? Like, okay, how do we know it was? It could have been Bobby Joe, Jimmy Joe, anybody that you know. So they said we got to pull you in our office and say you have to leave because you breached. My whole point to that is those might be some of the numbers that have said that might not get services because they asked to leave and went from shelter to shelter to shelter, if that kind of makes sense on how the programs work. And like we had piggybacked, all three of us, Tara, Mathena, and myself, talking about the people that why they don't call to get help, with the denial piece, with the generation, like Tara had mentioned, the generational piece, no matter what race it is. Like, for example, when people are scared, or generations, they tell you, oh, well, you go to your mom, or for example, your mom or your dad. Hey, mom or dad, so-and-so hit me. You know what? Well, it only happened once. You guys will make up and you'll get better. And then we meet people with Mathena and I, when we meet clients and we get into more of their history, they're like, you know what, Lisa, he hit me once 3 years ago and I wanted to leave, but my family told me not to, just to stick it out. So I don't even know if that really answered the question, but that's kind of what we see in a sense of why there's gaps, if that even answered the question.
And to piggyback on what Lisa said, because we are in the the Chicagoland area, if someone is too close to our safe house, they will not be able to get the services that we can offer here, and we'll have to send them further to the north side or wherever it's at, and that will make it harder for them to commute or whatever their situation is. And so they perhaps may go to that safe house and they only last a week, maybe two, couple of days, and then they're gone. So that's a break in service because they didn't complete their services.
Because we have to piggyback after that, we have a 15-mile radius.
Yes.
So when you do the intake and I ask for your address, if you're 15 miles or if 15 miles away, we have to send you to another Chicagoland shelter, and being said somewhere north. And that does happen a lot too.
So, and I'm thinking, I guess just because of the day and age that we live in now, are there protocols for like iPhones, that we can track cell phones and things like that? You can.
Absolutely. That's the first thing that happens when they do come. We never give them the direct address. They actually go to the police station first before they actually come to the safe house. And we definitely tell them, turn off your location. You cannot FaceTime while you're here at the safe house due to confidentiality. So yeah, that's a big thing. And we have to also look out for people. They put trackers on their cars.
Yeah.
That's a big thing too.
And just to go back a little bit, Mathena, I had a follow-up question from before. When you said how sitting on court or on the phone for 2 hours just to talk to a judge for 5 minutes, and I guess that can be extremely discouraging for a lot of survivors,
Yes.
or victims/survivors. But so if they get discouraged and they're like, forget it, I don't want them to bother. If they try to handle it on their own, do you think handling it on their own creates more of a risk for them?
Absolutely. It creates a risk for them, their children, because anything that especially if you have kids, anything that you do can affect your child. So you have to definitely be mindful of the decisions that you choose to make when you're doing that. So yeah, you don't want to handle it on your own.
I appreciate you saying that, Mathena, bringing up the children. For me, it took a really long time. I was in my relationship for 12 years and eventually left. And I credit that to several things, faith being the number one thing, but I also had court advocates. Advocates are extremely essential in this process, and which is why I find myself giving back in that capacity. So being in the courtroom, the virtual courtroom with participants, I can see how it's such a plus. Being able to stand with that individual. For me, when we were able to meet in person, you're standing in front of the judge next to the paramour. Your perpetrator is right here next to you. Where here it's virtually, it can just be just as scary. But having that support is also an added layer to encourage the individual to continue on with that process. One of the things that was that turned the light on for me was hearing a police officer tell me if I did not leave, then my children could be taken from me because of neglect. And unfortunately, I've seen that happen in this work. Children taken and then not reunited with their family, and parents trying to figure out what can they do, and everything that they've done in their past is now being used against them, and they look like, you know, monsters when in fact that wasn't the issue, you know. So I think moving forward, I advocate for advocates. You know, we need more and more advocates that are able to do this work and stand with individuals going through these processes.
I remember, and I think Dr. Coffee is, I'm like, hello, Dr. Coffee, I miss all of you. When I had Dr. Coffee's class a few years ago, we actually went to 555 Harrison on a field trip. I'm gonna get a little emotional or choked up, so just bear with me for a minute. I remember when we went in a few rooms for criminal and for civil, and then we have to write a paper on our trip and what we learned. And I remember writing in my paper that it made me so angry that these survivors, when you go to the court and you're in front of the judge, that space, or I forgot what the material is called, but that space between you and the perpetrator, it's not that big. And I felt like if I could call that courthouse and tell them to reconstruct it and make it, even though there might be a court advocate in the middle of you, that is still so nerve wracking. And we deal with it, well, not so much now because of COVID, of course, but when you hear our ladies, our clients go to court and the worst thing was, Lisa, I was so close to him. I was so close to him. I was so close to him, because it's so nerve wracking because you're with this person that hurt you. And at the courthouse, you're like this far away from him or her. It's nerve wracking. But I remember that when I went to there for my trip. I just wish that would change. They still have advocates when you did it in person, but there needs to be a little bit of change to make it a little bit more farther away.
And I have to give credit to the change that has taken place, because I had court in the other court building, which is now Giordano's downtown, but there was only one elevator for everyone to go upstairs to the courtroom. So you're not only in front of the judge, but there's an opportunity for the perpetrator to intimidate you while you're on the elevator. And they could bring however many people with them as they wanted. It has changed, but it's a slow change. Yeah, I totally agree with that proximity to the judge and to, you know, the person that you are there for court about. That's got to change.
I agree with that as well.
Okay.
I have a follow-up question for our panelists from Wings. Now, when we were just talking about the service gap, Lisa and Mathena, you guys were talking about how some of that percentage is based off, you know, victims that have been kicked out or it's too far. Now, I just want to ask, there's no transportation provided for those clients
Oh,
or
no.
for those victims?
No, we definitely provide transportation. We provide Uber and Lyft for, you know, to get them from point A to point B, or if they're coming from their abuser to get them to our location. We definitely provide transportation.
Okay.
And then we've noticed, sadly to say, when we have an intake and they're coming from a little bit farther in the Chicagoland area, Mathena, you know where I'm going with this. The Illinois Chicago, this is not funny, the Illinois Chicago hotline provides gift cards or voucher cards for Uber or Lyft. So for example, like Mathena said, our supervisor will get you from point A to point B and she will order it. What the hotline was doing was they were just giving the callers these vouchers. So me and Mathena, for example, might be like, oh, there's a new client coming. We'll get her room ready. There's kids coming, you know, make her all comfortable and make sure she's comfy when she gets here. They have a matter of hours to get here before to sure that they're safe. Me and Mathena are like, okay, wait for it. Then we call the hotline and say, okay, whatever the worker's name is, where is Jane Doe coming? Oh, Lisa, we gave her the code a few hours ago. They never made it. So some callers were going through all that dramatic and trauma of us doing an intake with them, whether they lied or not, and then they're out somewhere else. It's this COVID, we see so many different things with this COVID pandemic, because we think that they're going to get here, get the help, whether we're assigned to Mathena or to myself. And then we're like calling the hotline, please red flag Jane Doe, because, you know, Belisa, we gave her four codes for lip, and she didn't come. Sorry to say she didn't. So we don't know, 2 notes, whether, and this is the sad part, whether the perpetrator found her, or did she, I don't want to say lie, with maybe not honest with us, and went somewhere else. And that's also challenging too, because we in this field, no matter who you are, talking about just us and, you know, everybody, but for us in wings, we're like, okay, let's get them here, get them comfy, get them what they need, food, a bed, what have you. And we always wonder, like, what happened to them?
Okay. So there was a question in the chat, and this can be for anyone who wants to jump in. What information will you provide to someone who is young, maybe going through a domestic violence situation with a boyfriend or girlfriend, paramour, whatever, and they're afraid to tell their parents? They don't want to tell their parents. What information or advice could you give them?
I would say, or ask them, do they have one person they can trust? A sister, brother, best friend, best guy friend, best girlfriend, whoever that may be. And also, whoever's listening, if you know of anyone going through domestic violence, do not judge them. Don't sit there and say, oh, well, why didn't you leave? Don't let some man or some woman beat on you. That's not very helpful. And just when you're meeting somebody, whether it's somebody off the street or you're in public somewhere and you see somebody going through something, just ask them, are they okay? How can you help? And then if there's somewhere where they can go, or talk to that friend, or even see if you can talk to that friend, because I've done that before as well on the hotline.
Okay.
And to piggyback on what Lisa said, you have to want it for yourself. You have to want it, because we see that a lot, that we do have people that come in and then they go back to the abuser. So they just want to take a break, and then they come back to the safe house, or they'll go to another domestic violence shelter. So there's back and forth. But you have to want to leave. You have to get to the point where you're tired.
Okay. Okay.
That's the challenging part on what we do in this field. Like, for example, we just had a case, Mathena, about 2 weeks ago. A mother with 2 children had came, and I know how we mentioned earlier in the conversation about the one isolated incident.
Yeah.
There had been reports of abuse from this mother, and she was here, Mathena, 2 or 3 days?
That's it.
It was short, yeah, 2 or 3 days, that she wanted to go back. And guess
Right.
what? We had to call DCFS, if a DCFS worker, and in front of the DCFS investigator, rather, she actually told the worker that, oh, he's nicer. She was in the whole denial phase. And she had to tell this woman that if you go back to your abuser, the wing staff or myself will be getting a phone call. And that's also challenging, because like I said, you want to give everybody the best services, but you also have to learn that when you meet somebody in this field, that you have to meet them where they are. So technically this guest, we call them guests, not clients, was not ready to leave her abuser. All we can do is sit and plan with them, find out if they have a safe place, or like you were saying with a young person, are they able to stay at your house, or whatever you can do to help that person go through it. So for this case, we just safety planned. Here's a hotline number. If you're going back home to your abuser, which she even told all of us that she did, here's a hotline number. Please call if you need anything else. And safety plan and make sure that the kids are going to be okay, because you never know what's going to happen when they go back home. And that's very, very hard for us in this field. And when we see that, hear it, and also know, because you never know what's going to happen in the future. Could it be worse, or could he change in that case?
Okay. And then, Tara, we're so inclined to say she when we're referring to victims, but we do know that there are men who are abused by their wives or girlfriends. What suggestions or advice can you give to the men who are being abused by their wives or girlfriends, and maybe even using the children. The women may be using the children to control the dads.
I believe the same rules apply. The same advice would apply. Get help. It's okay. Speak out. If, as an advocate, if there's anything, if there are different patterns I see in an individual that is not their normal way of being, and I feel like it could be domestic violence, I'll ask questions. You know, if we're in that space, you know, comfortable enough and they feel safe enough to have that conversation with me. If there are any individuals listening now that need help, it's okay to reach out. It is so okay to reach out. No one deserves to be in a violent relationship. Love is not abuse. You know, we say all these chants, they don't apply just to women. They apply to everybody. Love is not abuse. Get help. It is the exact same thing. I've seen it on both sides. I thought about a participant I had some years ago who kept the fact that they were in a domestic violence secret because they were trans and for fear of, and they were a part of a street organization, but for fear of being judged and shamed. Victim blaming and shaming is so real. They chose not to tell anybody. Unfortunately, this person ended up getting shot. So that's how we connected. I was their advocate and we were able to kind of work through some things, but because their lifestyle would have been judged by those possibly that I worked with. This is not at all so a different place, but because I felt like their safety would have been in jeopardy, not necessarily fit from physical harm, but emotional harm. I kept that person away from the office. And I did what I could to make sure I shielded them and still have services available to them, accessible.
Okay.
I hope that helps.
It does. Thank you.
It does. Thank you. Thank you, Tara. Poverty is a real issue that's affecting families, especially right now with unemployment skyrocketing due to COVID. And I was just, a question here is, are you seeing more people experiencing economic hardships showing up for services?
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We do. And part of that can be from just financial abuse too. If we have moms that were taken care of by their abuser, and so when they come to the safe house, they have no work experience. They have no experience in anything. So, and when they don't have no experience, trying to get back into the field of working or just seeing an employment specialist is that can be overwhelming for them.
Okay. All
How
right.
can, oh, sorry, Shirlesha, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna make a comment. Ms. Denard, she just put it out there. She said COVID got a lot of good people messing up their lives. People aren't used to being at home all day with a significant other, so it's driving everybody crazy. So I guess that would probably, you're at home with that partner all day long. Now, before I only had to be home with you for a couple of hours. Now I'm home with you all day. So yeah, I can see that.
I think that's where that self-care comes in, right? Self-care comes in anytime, anywhere. But I think that's where the conversation of self-care comes in. That's when you need to go for a walk, or maybe the bath needs to be a little longer today, or whatever it is. But finding that space where, okay, I got to get my mind together. I have to get my mind together.
Yes.
I might not have showed up today because me and my husband had a little situation. We talked it out and worked it through, but being able to, if you're not at that space where you and your significant other or your children or your parents or whomever you're living with, you can't talk it through, then get the space. Otherwise, take time to talk it through and find out what the real issues are. Because a lot of times it could be something so simple. So simple. I just need space. I just need you to turn off all the lights. How about that? Something simple, but communication and self-care, I think, really come into play with what we're experiencing being cooped up in the house for some of us all day long.
Okay, and Tara Christina said, thank you for sharing that. Tara, I'm sorry. She
Yeah,
said,
no
thank you
worries.
for sharing that. There's so many
Absolutely.
people who are suffering in silence.
Absolutely.
All right, and so Tara, you just talked about getting away, finding some time, pulling back. Someone says, what ways have you identified as a means of self-actualization for those in abusive situations? And how do you find self?
Sometimes you need others to find self. For me, I know I'm saying the word advocate a lot, but my advocate was my dad. My dad was the one who went to court with me. Like I said, I was in that relationship for close to 12 years. It yielded 2 beautiful sons that are young men now. However, my father kept telling me the entire time, very much to Lisa's point, about encouraging those that are in those situations, and the victim blaming and shaming has to stop, because that's not going to help the person leave. And for me, my father kept telling me over and over, Tara, you have to see yourself the way God sees you. You are amazing. You're wonderfully made. My father tells me that still to this day. Like, I know that, I get it. But those encouraging words were so pivotal during that time. And I didn't know what seeds that would plant for me. But the more and more I sought, okay, I can't just go on daddy's words. How do I really see myself? I had to do that practice, and I worked for myself. But it led to that self-actualization, which then helped me understand I don't deserve this. I don't want to. I have to not be a part of this. This can't be our legacy. This can't be my legacy. And, he did share with me at one point, you're either going to raise men that abuse or are abused. That was an eye opener. In these little golden nuggets. No, I didn't leave right away. It took 3 orders of protection and many, many violations of those orders of protection for me to finally leave. But once I did, I was gone. I was gone. I was done. And from there, it looked like therapy. It looked like healthier friends, healthier circles. So it took time. It's still taking time. And healing is a process. It doesn't just happen one time. I think healing is ongoing.
Yeah.
And to
Thank
piggyback
you for that question.
Ooh, sorry, Tara. And to piggyback up what
No.
Tara said, she just shared part of her experience with her father. So on mine and Mathena's end, a lot of people wish I wish they had more parents like your dad, because a lot of our clients do not have a support system because the parents got fed up with trying to support their child or adult child in the relationship, and they got fed up. So they just walked away. So when we ask them in our sessions, or just find out for an emergency contact form, do you have a support system? They say no. They don't have they have a mother or they have a father that are still living, but they don't speak to them because their abuse was whatever type it was to them. The family gave up on them, sisters, brothers, mom and dad, grandparents. And then we have to work through our sessions when one of their goals might want to be to rebuild it. And like we were saying with Tara and I, we try to reconnect it, teach them that their siblings or cousins shouldn't shame and blame and all that kind of stuff. And then they get, better with the relationship. But I wish everyone was like your father, Tara, that helped them and supported them and said, okay, I'll go to court with you or do something in that regard.
I know for me, it was my sisters, my siblings, and they're actually younger than I am. My sisters were my biggest support system. And they'll say things that I needed to hear, not what I wanted to hear. And that's what I needed at that time.
Very good.
So I just want to ask, in all 3 of the panelists, and with one word, if you had, or one sentence rather, if you had advice for somebody out there that's currently watching and they're going through a domestic violence atmosphere situation, what advice would you tell them to take that initial step to getting service and getting help?
For me, I'm going back to, religion. If you make one step, God will make two. But you just have to make one step.
Very good.
For me, I would say it's time to show up for you. You are not alone.
I would have to say, you were not alone and you deserve to live in peace.
Yeah.
What about you, Shirleisha?
What would I say?
Yes.
I was thinking throughout this whole thing, I was thinking, we have to be careful as friends, as sister girlfriends, because we're quick to not so much pass judge on them, on others, on our friends who may be going through these situations, but we have to be careful not to judge them in our own way, not to say, oh girl, you just need to leave, or why are you staying, or no, I can't be bothered with that. But we have to learn how to have a more supportive and a more accepting spirit about ourselves when it comes to our clients, when it comes to our family and friends, who when we have them, when they're experiencing these things. And so I would just say that we have to be present and willing to support. And speaking of support, how can family and friends, what ways can family and friends support the survivors and the children of the survivors? Like, what ways can they help, especially given a pandemic where you may not want to take other people into your home, and we're expected to remain socially distant? What resources or what support can we offer?
If you know that your family or friends is going through something, my favorite D word is diversion. Hey, let's have a family. I mean, I know it's COVID. Try to think of something that will get them away from that perpetrator that makes sense during COVID, or whether it wasn't COVID. Like, hey, let's go out and study. Or my friend Susie needs me to quiz her on something, just to get them out of the house and away from that person. Or if you're a family member, make up a story like, I need help around the house if you have an elderly parent or something. I like to tell when they safety plan and they necessarily didn't, they're not in a shelter, but if you're living with someone that's like that, or not living like that, but that's going through that, to just make up diversions for them to keep them safe. If they're not ready to leave, just hang out with them a little bit longer. I know it might be hard to drop them off at home and have them into a situation, but just do what you can in that moment. Well, come on over for coffee or tea or something like that, and just get them out of the house just for that little bit. That also helps.
Okay. All right, we have just a couple more minutes. And I know we have been getting questions from our Facebook chat. And I guess I need to find out if we have any additional questions that are there.
I think we just have one additional comment that can actually be elaborated on. And that is, when victims leave, that is the most dangerous time for them. Can maybe one of our panelists kind of elaborate why that is?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I just want to say a small piece, sorry. When I mentioned earlier about that client that we had with the mother with the children, not only were we worried for the children's safety, but there's statistics that show that, like you just mentioned, Vanessa, that they get madder. What if she went home, which, like I said, we'll never know, and he got mad because she knows she was in a shelter. I can go on about this case, but he knows that she was in a shelter. You can, I forgot what I'm not thinking of the statistics right now, but it is true. They get madder and madder. The stronger you get, the more independent you get. And also if they know that you left and went either alone to a shelter or took his children or the children to a shelter. And we have to just make sure that they're safe. Because sadly to say, we have seen Wings clients come back twice.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. And those are the lucky ones, I would assume, the ones that get to come back.
I don't know how to call them lucky, but
Right.
Because that they're still alive, that they.
Oh,
that
yes,
they're
yes,
able to come back.
yes, yes,
Yes.
correct. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, I wasn't clear about that. Sorry. Okay.
The only thing, can I add one thing
Yes.
very quickly? The only thing I would probably add to that is this whole, I don't know if I've heard any of us say it, but this whole pandemic of domestic violence is about power and control. So to Lisa's point, the individual or the perpetrator gets madder because they are losing their power over you and they're losing that control. So it's a power struggle. And unfortunately, if someone is telling you they're going to take your life, you need to believe that and get somewhere safe.
Because, for example, when we do intakes, like Mathena and I had mentioned, not only about the address being the proximity of the mileage away, we have to first ask them their name. Second question is, where are you at this present moment? I'm at a McDonald's on 60, whatever. I'm at McDonald's wherever. If they give us an address, the third question is, are you safe and are you alone? So many times our callers are in a hidden closet. And sadly to say, we cannot do their intake. Okay, here's what I need you to do, Susie. Please hang up the phone. I cannot talk to you because of your safety. Try to go to a police station or a hospital. Do you have a current cell phone that you can put in your pocket or your purse and call us back right away? Because like that also goes into consideration as well as with the statistics, because he knows that she's making a call, or whoever the survivor is, if they know that the survivor is making a phone call right now, trying to leave them, oh, heck no, you're not going to leave me. You're going to stay here. And more happens. Like I've even taken a phone call where a woman has called me in a Dunkin' Donuts and he was across the table in the restaurant. And just to feel that you have to reject somebody because of her, you know that you're doing a good job because you want to keep her safe, but please, Susie, call me back when you guys are not with him, or you able to go to a friend's and then call me. So we do that safety planning too. Like if you have a friend or family, go to their house and then call us back. Safety plan is the most important thing that we do every single day in this job, every single day, whether it's an intake and you're just getting to our safe house, like Mathena had mentioned with the cell phone and location taken off, or if you're going to grandma's to have them babysit because you have to go to work and grandma's been in quarantine. Does he or she know where grandma lives? Keep the location off. If you see your perpetrator, that kind of thing, make sure you're safe. Here's the phone number. We do that 24/7 here when anybody goes out of the house. Because we want to keep them safe.
Thank you. Mathena, you mentioned, and this is for anyone, but Mathena mentioned that even something as simple as being called out of your name is abuse. Can you guys share with us some more red flags to look for in relationships?
Anytime someone is putting you down and it make you feel a certain type of way, it make you feel less than, then that's abuse. Being called stupid, any type of derogatory name, that's abuse. That's abuse.
Okay. Thank you,
And
Mathena.
this is probably going a little bit longer than what we wanted to, but you have to also, not you, Mathena, but everybody that's listening, abuse comes in so many different forms. Like, for example, we have a cook that cooks here 5 days a week and gives them fresh meals for lunch and dinner. Our breakfasts are like continental type breakfast. We meet clients that they're afraid to eat
Yeah.
when they come here because they're abuser withheld food. And they don't know how to sit at a table and be able to get whatever they want, scoop whatever portion they want and be able to eat. And then you got to get called upstairs to go, your client's having a breakdown during dinner. Then you find out during your sessions, it's all over food or noises or anything like that. Maybe I'm going a little bit about triggers, but abuse, there's so many, yes, there's the book, the textbook, the physical, the emotional, but all that goes with it. There's so many umbrellas under those 5 or 6 terms that we mentioned earlier. And like, if you know somebody, anybody listening, if you know somebody that you've noticed that maybe if you go out, well, not so much because of COVID, or they tell you about their boyfriend or their partner or whoever it is to them, mother, daughter, whoever, are not getting along, or the person's losing weight, or they're rushing to make a phone call, or they're always answering the phone call. Just look at your friend or your relative or whoever it is for different behavior patterns. Not everybody, like we had even mentioned, will tell you right away that they're going through domestic violence. But if whether you met a new friend 2 months ago or you've known your friend for 20 years, there's also certain signs that they might display. So just pay attention. Be that friend, sibling, cousin, all those branches that we are to people, daughter, mother, whoever you are to that person. And just pay attention and just help them the best you can.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you guys definitely for participating
Yes.
and sharing.
Thank you for having us. This is wonderful.
All right, Vanessa.
I just want to thank you so much for being part of this event and just being able to bring your input, your profession and everything and your specialties into our meeting and just, into this space and helping those that are in the community, in the classroom to kind of elaborate on what domestic violence looks like, what is happening in correlation with the pandemic. And domestic violence at this time. We are extremely grateful. This was an amazing space that you guys help us create, by answering questions and sharing your input. So I am extremely grateful. Lisa, Mathina, and Tara, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much. At this time, we're gonna put up a slide and we have something to share with our guest.
Hello, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Misha Wofford, and I am a student at GSU and a participant in the Community Practice Learning Lab. Just wanted to share a quote. Survivor song. I have been victimized. I was in a fight that was not a fair fight. I did not ask for the fight. I lost. There is no shame in losing such fights. I have reached the stage of survivor and am no longer a slave of victim status. I look back with sadness rather than hate. I look forward with hope rather than despair. I may never forget, but I need not constantly remember. I was a victim. I am a survivor. The author is not known. Thank you for joining us.
Hmm. Wow.
And then I would like to ask if either Dr. West or Dr. Crowder had any closing remarks, or if any of our panelists had any closing remarks.
I want to say thank you so much for allowing us this space and this opportunity to be a blessing to other women and other people that's listening.
Thank you, Mathena.
Yeah, thank you again for the opportunity to share our stories, our experience, our lived experience with those who are here. And I would like to encourage all of the students that are online tonight that you can change this world. So thank you for showing up tonight.
Thank you.
I just want to say thank you for having me as well. This was an honor to be part of this panel. And what I would like to say to the GSU students, like what Tara, I was going to say exactly what Tara said, you can make a difference. Keep doing what you guys are doing at school. Listen to all your professors, like I did when I was at Governor State, like Mathena's doing now with school, and all of you guys, Vanessa, all of you. I know there's so many names to mention, but keep doing what you're doing. And like I said in my bio, I found the niche of the domestic violence population when I was at Governor State, due to a lot of my professors that are on this panel right now. You can make a difference.
Thanks, Lisa.
Wow. Wow. I'm trying not to cry. I was texting Dr. Crowder saying, I feel like crying.
I already did cry, Dr. West.
All right. And I've been trying not, because I don't want to mess up the mascara on the camera. However, I see this very important topic as I felt like I was in church with the people who are on Facebook Live and supporting and encouraging each other. I thank you, each of you, for sharing your stories, right? Because we all got one. We all got one. And I just couldn't help but think and remember when I was young and I was a child, and I asked my mama, I said, Mama, why did you stay so long as the child? I just want to say that we're going to continue this work together. We're going to figure out, how do we reach others? How do we support others? Those who are still on Facebook with us, reach out to us. We have a network. If somebody doesn't have a place to go in the middle of COVID, we're going to find them a place to go. We are here for this. We are social work. This is what we do. There's no such thing as you don't have a home in social work. We are committed to saving lives. So thank each and every one of you for sharing your stories, for bringing us together. And I just want to say, in terms of the education and reaching out and the outreach, this is the beginning. This is the beginning. I'm very proud and to call you my colleagues, each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. West.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for joining us tonight from Governor State and around Chicago and beyond. Thank you for bringing your hearts, and your minds, and your authenticity. We want everyone to be safe. We want everyone to be happy and healthy, because you deserve it. With that, we'll say good night. Thank you all.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.